Welcome to Office 2013 class video number 40. Hey, if you want to download this workbook, video 40, Excel Basics 22, click on the link below the video or go to our class website. Hey, we're still studying Excel Basics 22. That's this video, and we want to talk about Excel's golden rule. Now, wait a second. We've already talked all about Excel's golden rule all the way back in Excel Basics number 2. But I'm going to have you do a homework problem from the textbook. And in the textbook, they ask you to violate this golden rule. And I'm going to show you in this video how I want you to do this homework problem differently. Now here's Excel's golden rule. If a formula input can change, put it in a cell and refer to it with a cell reference. If it will not change, you can type it into the formula. So we've had a number of examples in this class of when we can type formula inputs into a formula. So for example, we have yearly expense and we need monthly. You simply take the total year expense and divide by 12, because 12 months in a year is a formula input that's not going to change anytime soon. Similarly, we did formulas for calculating hours worked. In parentheses, we took the later time minus the earlier time, and since that's the proportion of a 24-hour day, we have to multiply it by 24. That's another example of a formula input that's not going to change. 24 hours in a day, not going to change anytime soon. Here's what they're going to ask you to do in the textbook. It's a great problem. You have to do this whole problem to calculate employees' payroll. Federal tax cell, F2. Oh my heavens. This is going to be the exemption amount and the tax rate. So instead of putting them into assumption table like we did down here, they're going to ask you to type them in. Forget it. Don't do that. Put these numbers into an assumption table and refer to them with the cell reference. And we'll see how to do that in just a moment. State tax rate, not in a formula. That's an example of a formula input that can change. Don't type it into a formula. There's been some studies done over the years about number one cause of spreadsheet errors. And it comes down to people typing formula inputs that can change into the formula. One other thing, you're going to also have to remember your rounding rule. Here, we're multiplying decimals, and so we should use the round. And we've seen lots of examples, especially last video. We saw like 4 examples where you get into trouble. If you have a subsequent formula, this sum function, and it's looking at all these calculations, if they're not rounded properly, then this sum can show the wrong answer. All right, let's go over to the sheet similar to homework Excel Project 2. Here are our employees, dependents, hourly wage, hours worked for the period, and we want to calculate gross pay, federal tax, and state tax. So gross pay, that's simply going to be hours worked for the period times hourly wage. We're going to use round. Equals round, hours worked, 1 cell to my left, times wage per hour, 2 cells to my left. And then comma to the penny is 2. Now this is payroll. Anytime you have payroll or invoicing and you're dealing with pennies, round to the 2. Sometimes for payroll, if you have a dollar round requirement, you'd use a 0 here. Not here. This is to the penny. Control Enter. Now I'm going to copy this down, and it's going to copy the format, and I don't want it, so I'm going to point to my Smart tag and say fill without formatting. I love that Smart tag. All right, now federal tax. Here's gross pay. We're not taking gross pay times federal tax rate. They'll actually subtract some amount based on dependence and exemption. The more dependents you have, the more total exemption you'll get. So our formula is going to be equals, open parentheses, gross pay, and that's a relative cell reference as we copy the formula down, always looking 1 to my left. And I need to subtract, and now I need to subtract dependents times exemption amount. Dependents, relative cell reference, 1, 2, 3, 4 to my left, times our assumption table formula input. The exemption amount, 2515, sitting in F17. Now we're only copying this down. We're not copying it to a rectangular range, so I'm simply going to hit F4 and lock that cell reference. Now close parentheses, and now we can multiply times our federal tax rate, F4 to lock it. Now notice we had to put this inside of parentheses to force this multiplication first, and then that amount is subtracted properly from the gross pay. Control Enter and copy it down. Point to the smart tag, fill without formatting. But we forgot something. I'm going to come up. Notice I have the whole column highlighted. If you already have it highlighted and you need to edit the formula, F2. That's multiplying a bunch of decimals. So we need to round. And we have to be careful here. Round. A lot of times in this class we have selected a function and then hit Tab. I want you to notice what will happen here. Because we already have a parentheses there that we need, when I hit Tab, the round is like greedy. It took it away. So you have to be careful when you have a parenthesis sitting right there. I'm actually going to have to type another one. You can see the color coding is proper now. The orange is on the inside. Now I'm going to come to the end. I could also use my END key, end, type a comma, and then a 2, close parentheses. Now I've edited this formula in the active cell because I've highlighted the column already. If I want to repopulate the correct formula, I hold Control and Enter. I can go to the last cell in F2. That is amazing. Look at that. It got exactly the gross pay and dependents, relative cell references, and the 2 federal tax and exemption amounts are absolute. All right, our state tax. This is multiplying decimals, so I'm going to use round. And here I'm going to hit Tab. There was no parentheses there, so no problem. Gross pay, 2 cells to my left, times the state tax rate. And I'm going to lock that with F4. Comma 2 to round to the penny, close parentheses. Control Enter. Copy it down. And fill without formatting. Now I want to point something out about fill without formatting. I'm going to Control Z. Imagine this. We had highlighted the column before we started our formula, and then I hit F2 and the active cell gets put into edit mode. Now we're just typing our formula. If you do this, when you Control Enter to populate your formula, it actually puts only the formula in. It's not going to mess with any of the number formatting or other formatting. Control Enter. See that? That time it didn't bring that $sign down. All right, I'm going to click on the last cell in F2. So that homework problem, you're going to be sure to round because you're multiplying and dividing decimals, and you're using the calculations in a subsequent calculation. And don't type numbers that have the potential to change into formulas. Simply put them in cells, refer to them with cell references. All right, we'll see you next video.